All right, Dan Abrams is with us. You heard my perspective. Let's now listen to Dan. Dan, the floor is yours. Talk to us about both the video that we saw and then the reaction that we're now seeing as to the suspension, which is now we're being told is a suspension of LivePD.
Yeah. So first of all, obviously watching that tape, that body cam, is very difficult to watch. I had never seen the video before it was released. It is, beyond difficult to watch that as you hear the cries for help from Javier Ambler there. The issue, though, that you raised with LivePD, right, and you were talking more broadly about these kinds of shows, is I do think this show is different. The difference between a show like this and a show like Cops, for example, is Cops is like a highlight reel of crazy things that happens with police officers. And what LivePD does at its best is offers a much more transparent look at policing in America. And the reason we know what happened on that tape with Javier Ambler is because there were body cams. The reason that you can watch LivePD and make judgments about what you're seeing from the police officers in the field. You may feel that they're doing a bad job in certain cases. You may feel that they're doing a good job. But the reality is the reason you can make that judgment is because you're getting to watch them in action in real time. In retrospect, I believe there were mistakes made here, right? The question that LivePD has been asked about the retention of the tape is an important one. And as you point out, I laid out all of the explanations on Law&Crime.com about the policy that had been in place for LivePD was actually enacted to protect citizens. It was enacted so that the police couldn't subpoena our videos all the time and constantly use them against citizens. And so we had a policy that was across the board about not retaining videos absent a specific request in the context of an investigation. But look, in this particular case, based on what happened, there should have been an exception. Before the show was canceled yesterday, I and others were advocating for a change in that policy in the wake of this. But I also think it's important to note that there is body cam footage. The DA there has pointed fingers at LivePD, suggesting that there's some sort of stonewalling. The DA never asked for LivePD's tape until this past week, when it became sort of politically expedient. There should have been requests. LivePD, as I just said, in retrospect, should have ended up saving the tape. But I think that shows that show transparency, the same way I believe in cameras in courtrooms, because I think that it's important in showing how the legal system works. I believe that having a camera with police officers, body cams, LivePD is important as well.
And I would agree, Dan. I don't think there's anything to disagree with those points. I think that this is a knee-jerk reaction. I also think that you as the face of LivePD and LivePD is kind of being dragged through the mud because of the faults of others. And I don't really see how, like, because you pointed out that the DAs are pointing the fingers at you. I don't see why the DAs are pointing the fingers at anyone but themselves. I don't see that connection. You don't have a duty there. I do see that, however, I do see the Ambler situation as a spark that obviously caused a fire. You guys addressed it. I think maybe put a pause on it, let you guys address those issues, figure out a way to move forward with those, because the absence of shows like this don't help. The presentation of shows like this could cause problems, but we have to think about how we do that. Canceling you guys outright doesn't solve the problem. The absence of this knowledge doesn't help. So I do agree there. But I do, me personally, and I don't know if this is the views of the people who canceled LivePD or anything like that, sometimes I worry as a public defender when we show an officer tackling someone because they have a warrant and putting them to the ground and handcuffing them without the context of, this isn't how the warrant squad is supposed to act. People start to think, well, this is the way that officers go about their day-to-day business, and this is the way that we should interact with police officers. But the conversation or the question should be, is it for LivePD to explain that this roughness is maybe not the status quo or not what should be happening? Or should it be, as you're saying, we present it and people decide as they go? That is not a question that I think I can answer. I don't know if you want to answer it here. Well, yeah. I don't think look, how this worked out was right.
I think it's a totally fair question, right? If you want to ask questions about and anyone wants to ask questions about how LivePD does what it does, that's totally fair. We should have that discussion. Just canceling the show, though, to me didn't seem to be the right answer. I vociferously opposed it. I fought tooth and nail to keep the show. And I think that there could have been conversations on how to make this a show for good. As I've said publicly, I believe you can both support the impactful, important, peaceful protests going on in this country, and not just the protest, but the message that we need change. And you can also say that the vast majority of police officers in this country are doing a noble and difficult job. And you can take those two things together and say, how do we use that in the context of a show like LivePD? But instead of having that discussion, which I thought we were going to end up having, I thought we would have a town hall. I thought we would have other sort of positive, forward-moving elements to talking about LivePD. The show was just canceled.
And I would agree, because I think the problem is, Dan, you're trying to have a conversation, not just with LivePD, not just with Law&Crime, that people don't want to have. It's too nuanced. It's too difficult. It's too hard. They just want to go for the easy answer of, you know what, let's just take them off the show. And I agree with you. I don't think that helps. I agree that maybe we press pause, and I do hope, and it's not that I hope, I think you are going to do it, because I know the man that you are, Dan. I hope that you do advocate for that. And I do hope that, and I know also that you will create room for people like myself, like public defenders or social justice reform people, to have a part in that reform and that roundtable to grow that way. I do agree with you that canceling is a knee-jerk reaction. It's one of the dumbest things to do, I think. I think there should have been a conversation. I think we could have done better here. And I'm sorry for your staff, for your fellow hosts, for the people who are losing jobs because of it, because I don't think this was handled the right way. But I do think there's things that could be fixed.
Look, I hear you. And this is the kind of conversation I had expected to be having with A&E staff members, with community leaders, et cetera. And instead, you and I are having this conversation on my network after the show is canceled. So, it's a tough situation. But look, I also get that there are, tempers flaring. There is a lot of emotion. There's a lot of passion in the country. There's a lot of pent-up anger. I get it. I really do. I understand all of that. But I appreciate, you understanding that there were other ways out here. There were other ways to try to move forward and make progress.
Now, before we head out, thank you for that, Dan. I also want to give these parameters, because I watch TV, and honestly, Dan, if I was watching this, I would probably not trust the words that I'm saying, because I would say, here's a young new host on Law&Crime talking to his boss. He doesn't want to say things that are going to upset him. He and his boss probably spoke beforehand, but I think you would agree, we never spoke about this. You never knew my point of view before this. We never compared notes. Rachel Stockman never told me what to say. This is completely about the
watched your show. I watched your show, and so I knew that you were not necessarily going to come on and say, hey, Dan, everything about LivePD is great. I mean, I've had a very strong feeling that was going to be the case. And that's okay. I mean, again, the same way I have to be able to answer these questions. I can't just say, yeah, LivePD is a good thing. It shows policing, and just be able to drop the subject. And I think these are important conversations to have. And, the conversations you have every day on the show, I think, are important conversations that we got to continue having. So, yeah.
Now, Dan, because I have you here, I will go this one extra step.
Yeah.
I don't think you have a legal obligation to show these videos of when police go above and beyond. I think I know in your article, I might be kind of giving this away a little. I think you did say at one point in time, and please correct me, that maybe you should have shown what happened to Javier Ambler, but stop short of when he died, because A&E has a policy against that. I do think showing more balance may be able to show, hey, sometimes police officers go a little too far, and sometimes they're upstanding gentlemen that we want them, and ladies, sorry, that we want them to be. Maybe that's where we need to move, and maybe that's where we'll be in a better place. And I'll leave you with the final words, and I'll tell people, go to our website, go to everything that Dan's writing on, because he's speaking about it. I don't agree fully with what live PD or cops or most shows stand up for, because there are aspects of it that I think are sensationalized and do monetize the hardest moments of people's lives. But I do think we need to see it in order to create the change that we do see. But I'll leave you with the final words, Dan.
Yeah. So I think that the toughest question for me to answer is the one you just asked, which is about why didn't live PD show the video? Because remember, this wasn't during a show that this happened. This was during a hiatus and our crew was just there. And the question is, well, then why didn't you guys show that? And the answer, the official answer, and the real answer, the honest answer is that because there was a fatality, we didn't show it. And there was a policy in place at A&E. I think in retrospect, that was a mistake. I think in retrospect, we should have showed everything leading up to Javier Ambler's final moment. And I think that that would have helped provide the sort of transparency that I'm talking about. Even if there was a fatality, it's another policy issue that I think could have been reviewed rather than canceling the show.
Okay. Dan Abrams, I want to thank you again. I think you've answered most, if not all, of my questions. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to interview in this way. You didn't have to. You chose to do so, and I hope people who don't share your views, at the very least, respect that and listen to what you had to say.